briefing coming to you live from the War Memorial Museum in Indianapolis. You should definitely get here to visit this place. With the Senate potentially hanging in the balance, Indiana voters are taking a hard look at tariffs, trade policy, and the economy, including two key groups: farmers and steelworkers. Mike Tobin has been taking the pulse of both communities. So, Mike, you join me now. What is driving this?
Well, what's driving it is the size of the industry. If you've ever looked at the shores of Lake Michigan in the northwest part of Indiana, you've noticed all the steel plants. There are smaller plants throughout the state. It's our #1 producer of steel in the nation. If you've ever driven through Indiana, you've noticed 83% of the state is either farm or forest, 60,000 farms. So when the president starts imposing policies that impact their bottom line, the steel workers and farmers in the Hoosier state start deciding if they're going to send the president some support in the Senate. Decision by the Trump administration to allow more ethanol to be sold into the summer months was a boost to Indiana farmers because it creates more demand for corn. However, the #1 consumer of Hoosier soybeans is China. Tensions over tariffs resulted in a lower price and greater uncertainty.
What we're going through right now with the tariffs is a bit of a challenge. It's a bit of a hiccup right now. We don't know, from one year to the next what those agreements necessarily are going to be.
The farmers want to see disputes with China resolved. That means agreements on protections for aluminum and steel, as well as intellectual properties. Only then do they stand to see the tariff on their beans lifted.
We've drawn a line in the sand, but we need to get these China tariffs issues resolved as quickly as possible.
Meantime, steel is booming. Since tariffs were implemented, imports of foreign steel are down by 19%. Plants are operating at new elevated employment levels and adding jobs across the nation. For Indiana steelworkers, that means job security.
I've got 2 promotions last 2 years, and financially I'm just doing a lot better in my family. And I
do have more money in my paycheck now, and I do feel the outlook's good.
So when it comes to Indiana's neck-and-neck Senate race, predictably the farmers, with all that uncertainty, are less certain of who they will vote for. They will still examine the particulars of the incumbent Democrat Joe Donnelly and his Republican challenger Mike Braun. Many steelworkers are union and therefore loyal Democrats. However, Jamie Crum says the administration got him more money, more security.
Thank you all.
So he'll try to give the president another Republican to work with in the Senate.
I'm going to vote my pocketbook, and my pocketbook's better now under a Republican administration.
So if you grow a lot of corn, you're happy with the president mostly because of ethanol. If you grow a lot of soybeans, you're losing a lot of sleep. You want this China thing resolved so you can make decisions about your future. In the steel industry, the president has won a lot of support from a lot of people who would have otherwise voted Democrat.
It's such an interesting place to be, Mike. Thank you for that report. And joining us for more on this, along with Mike, Ed Feigenbaum is the publisher and editor of Indiana Legislative Insight and a columnist for the Indianapolis Business Journal. Dean Hinkson was chief of staff to former Indiana Senator Dan Coats, who is now director of national intelligence, and Dean is an attorney with Melman Castiganetti, so he's here with us. Let me go to you first, Dean, because you know the state very well. When it comes to balancing these interests in Indiana, because the industry is so interesting, how do you think the candidates have done so far?
I think they've done well, Dana. We are the ag story, a top 5 producer of corn, soybeans, and pork, the good kind of pork. I think farmers don't like tariffs, but they like this president, and they're giving him...
They trust him.
They trust him, and they're giving him an opportunity to play out a strategy here. They also want to confront China, and they also want to solve these issues. On the manufacturing side, autos, airplane engines, medical devices, it's an amazing manufacturing story here in Indiana. Those supply chain concerns that are emanating from the C-suites of these companies are real. But the workers employed in those factories, the thousands of manufacturing workers in those factories, those are Trump supporters. Those are the people that put Trump in office, and I think they're willing to give that more time.
Ed, what do you see from a business perspective?
I think that Dean's absolutely right. We're hearing from the business leaders, from the execs and the company officials, that everything just seems to be okay. But we're also hearing from the grassroots and some of the farmers that there are concerns. You've got a 95% reduction in exports in August of soybeans to China. You had a tremendous increase, like almost a doubling of exports of pork to Mexico from January through April, and then starting June and July, you saw that kind of stagnate. So the farmers are concerned. But when you look at the poll numbers, you see that Hoosiers are willing to give the president a chance on the trade issues, and that's kind of catawampus to what you'd think, and that's a Hoosier colloquial.
I got to hand it to you, Ed.
For antithetical.
Catawampus on it's like the first time anyone's ever said that on this show. You're going to win a prize. What do you got in your hands there? What's all that?
We talked about trade here, and trade is the top issue in all of the TV spots that we're seeing. We're seeing more emphasis on trade here, and Indiana is the most manufacturing-dependent economy in the country. We're seeing all this emphasis on trade here. Trade and healthcare is the other top issue.
Mike, what do you say? You come to Indianapolis a lot. The president's going to be here on Friday and Monday, and he was talking to the farmers last week. What did he say?
Well, he was talking to the farmers, and he's told them simply that the China thing will be resolved. He didn't, that's not a direct quote, but he didn't give them a lot of specifics. He just said, rest assured, things will be resolved with China. And again, that really speaks particularly to the soybean growers. With the steel industry, though, they're pretty happy overall, but what they want to see is a robust, independent steel industry. They're at 79.4% of capacity right now. What they're shooting for is a sustained 80% capacity. Then they'll feel like they've got the independence that they're looking for. And one of the points that they throw out is that most of your, in fact, just about all your military hardware is made out of steel. Yeah. The electrical grid, there's only one producer, AK Steel, that makes electrical quality steel. So they want to see more independence in the event of a crisis. You're not beholden to someone else.
Dean, I did want to ask you about Brett Kavanaugh. That Supreme Court nomination and the confirmation process took place late August, early September. And is that where you started to see a big split between Republicans and Democrats, and Republicans kind of coalescing behind Mike Braun because they supported the president?
Dana, I think it was not only a driver for GOP enthusiasm, but how we know that that's the case is the change that came over the Donnelly campaign after the Kavanaugh vote. Donnelly has gone so far as to cut an ad in one fell swoop. He rails against government-run health care, embraces Trump's border wall, and quotes Ronald Reagan. That's quite a feat for a red state Democrat, and that was all in the wake of the Kavanaugh
Tell
vote.
me a little bit about that, Ed. In terms of how you see it, in terms of Donnelly is really running as quite a moderate person, and if you didn't put labels on some of his positions, you would think that he was a Republican.
Well, sure, but if you ask my Hannah News Service colleagues in Ohio and Illinois and Kentucky, they'll tell you that the Democrats there are totally different than the Democrats in Indiana.
Right, I get
it. And we do not elect liberal Democrats in Indiana. I think the last one we elected was probably Bert Spy to the U.S. Senate in 76.
Yeah, the 76,
74,
that's what 74,
I remember. Yeah, and this is a seat, the Donnelly seat, the Republicans believe that they have a birthright to it. It's the seat that Dick Lugar held from 76 on, and they want to get that back. They have essentially felt that the Democrats have been renting this seat from them since 2013.
Well, we wanted experts on Indianapolis and Indiana politics. We certainly got them. Ed Feigenbaum, Dean Hinkson, and Mike Tobin. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dana.